everyone, it's Jessica Dibzinski, and it is the 20th of the month, which means it is time for the Craft IQ Challenge. Now, this challenge is all about taking 7 different layers that we are given and creating a scrapbook page incorporating all 7 of them. Now, one of the layers said to include the color purple, which was basically my starting point for pulling my photos and then the papers that I'm going to use for my project today. So I have these 2 photos of my daughter Hadley last school year. It was like the open house, the drive-through version because of the pandemic, and she has a purple mask on. And then I also went to, this is a paper collection from close to my heart called In This Together. It's one of my very favorite collections. It obviously is COVID themed, but if you use the back side of the papers, they are just some neutral sorts of patterns, and they are really pretty. And there's a lot of really pretty purple in there. And so between her mask and then the papers, that's definitely how I'm going to achieve that. Now, the first layer is actually to create a half and half design on your layout. So I am using a pattern from the Make It From Your Heart Volume 5 book. And then here's one of my other layers of purple. I've grabbed some grape colored cardstock and cut it down as a photo mat. And then before I adhere my photos on, what I did is I just took a sanding block and I rubbed it against the edge of that paper to remove the color since it has a white core. And I really like how, rather than edge distressing it with ink, it pulls the color away and just makes those photo mats pop a little bit. So I'll go ahead and get my photos adhered down, and then I've also prepared a couple of other pieces of paper according to that pattern book. So I've got this 6x12 piece of pattern paper, a half circle, and then a bunch of strips of paper from that paper collection. Before I put them down though, I will grab my ink pads that color coordinate, and then I just like to swipe them across the edge of the paper to add a little bit of color to the side. And I think that kind of helps to make them stand out a little bit and make them look a little bit more finished. So I'll do most of that off camera so you don't have to watch me do that. And then now that I'm ready to start assembling things, I think I'm going to start with this half circle first. So it was an 8-inch circle, but the pattern book said to cut it so that you had 4.5 inches of it. And so I think that's because it wants the circle to kind of tuck a little bit behind that 6-inch piece of paper. So I've just come over to about 6.25 inches over from the right-hand side, and I'm using my Versamat and my T-square ruler to make sure that I'm putting that circle on nice and straight, the way that I've got it cut. And then when I layer this 6x12 piece of pattern paper over top, just about 1/4 inch of it will go over top of that half circle, and then that will make it look as though it's tucked behind and that there's a full circle back there, but really it's just that little half circle. So that's a good way to save some paper. All right, and the next part of the pattern is to take a bunch of these little strips. They are cut to 3/4 of an inch, I believe, so 3/4 by 6. And I just grabbed some various papers from that collection, especially some that had the purple in them. And then I liked the one paper had a bunch of masks on it, which I thought was perfect to go along with my photos. And then basically you just kind of layer them. There are about 3 of them on the bottom and then 4 of them on the top. And then the photos will go in the middle on both that pattern piece and then over into that half circle. So it's a really fast pattern to follow, and I love it. So that's what I'm going to do here. I won't make you watch me glue all of these down, but I did just kind of play around a little bit with what order I wanted those papers to go to make sure that they looked good in a specific way. And I put that mask paper on the top and the bottom just because it was the darkest color, and I thought that worked really well. All right, so now I'm ready to bring my photos in, and I'm looking at the other part of my list here of what I need to include. I need to tear something, and I need to add some stamping, and I need to create a tag from pattern paper. So I'm like, all right, before I get, too much stuff adhered down, maybe I need to think about some of those other elements that I need to include. So when I was cutting my papers, I did have this zip strip. It's basically the branding strip at the top of my papers, and the one side just always has a pretty little pattern to it that you can use on your projects. So it's purple, so I saved that because I think I might tear that and have that be my torn piece. And then I'm definitely going to do some stamping. That's one of the layers, but I love to do that on my scrapbook pages anyway. And I have a bunch of these COVID-themed stamp sets from Close to My Heart. I'm not sure if they're still available. If they are, I will link them down below. But I'm going to do some stamping on my layout with those. So I like the one that says Miss Your Face, and it's in a speech bubble, so I think I'm going to stamp that and have that over top of one of my photos. And then on a different stamp set, I found one that has these two little people, like people outlines, with an arrow between them to represent that social distancing. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit because this is where I get into a lot of stamping and just kind of pulling these final things together on the layout. So I'm going to stamp these little social distanced people across the bottom of my page on that white space. And I will stamp them in a sapphire color, which is that nice navy blue. And then off of one of the other stamp sets that I pulled, there's just a little tiny heart. And so I'm going to stamp that heart in the grape color, which is purple. And then I will repeat that process all the way across the bottom of my page. Now, I do need to do a tag from pattern paper, so I grabbed my Tags and Tabs thin cut set from Close to My Heart, and I made one tag out of white cardstock and the other one out of that fun mask paper. And I'm just going to layer those together behind my photos. But first I'm going to do a little bit more stamping. So like I said, I do love to add stamping to my layouts anyway, but I was really pleased that that was one of the layers to include for this challenge. So again, going to those stamp sets that I have that are related to the pandemic, there is one that says Social Distance Champion. And so I thought that was perfect because these were actually photos that I took in the car as we were making our way through the drive-through open house for her elementary school. So, you know, normally when school starts, you get to go into the building and meet the teachers and walk around and see the classroom and where you're going to sit and all those kinds of fun sorts of things. But this was in August of 2020, and so it was the first, time going back to school since everything had shut down. And the schools were still trying to be cautious, and so rather than going into the building, we were allowed to do a drive-through. And so different grades had, set times that they had to come around the school parking lot, and then the teachers were all kind of lined up according to grade level. And then we just drove through, and they handed us a bag of stuff through the window, and everybody had masks on, and we kind of waved, and that was the way we did our open house. So that's what these photos are from, and I thought that, like I said, not only was the purple perfect for this particular project, but just that's where I got my papers from and everything, as I was kind of going with that COVID theme. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead. I did put that one that says Miss Your Face on some foam tape because I do also need to create dimension. That was the 7th layer. And so I've got some foam tape on there to take care of that particular one. Later, when I put some string through the top of both of those tags, the tops are kind of curled up just a little bit. So you don't see that happen on camera, but the tags in person do definitely also have some dimension to them. They're not flat to the page. And so I've got that part taken care of there. I did tear that zip strip. I'm going to put it on so it's almost like a piece of washi tape is the look I'm going for across the top of my photos. And I think except for the 5th layer, which is to add brads, at this point I have everything done. So a little bit more dimension. I did stamp this cute little dog with a mask on, and I colored that off camera with my Spectrum Noir Tri-Blend markers, which is really fun to do for shading. And then I put him on foam tape, and then I'm just grabbing a couple of the tiny stamps from some of those stamp sets and kind of using them to scatter around my page. So I'll put a little one there, and then adding into those clusters and the little scattered stamps that I did. I found these old silver heart brads. Do you remember when we used to use brads all the time? I do still sometimes, but I tend to kind of forget that I have them in my stash. It's funny how we kind of go in waves, of tools or techniques that people use a lot in their scrapbooking, and then they kind of sort of come and go. And I feel like brads are one of those things that I kind of forgot how awesome they are. So definitely glad that that was a layer in this particular challenge, that I had to go find some of those brads that I had sitting in my stash. So I'll put a couple of those around here. And then that is pretty much it. So like I said, this is part of a challenge, the Craft IQ Challenge Hop. And there are several other ladies who are participating, and I will leave links to all of their videos down below. They took those same 7 layers and created their own projects with it. And I really love seeing how people use the same elements and then create different things. So it's a lot of fun to do and to watch. So make sure that you check them out. And here is my finished product. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed watching. And if you're not already a subscriber, I would appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. I am a close to my heart maker. And so if you saw anything you loved, I will definitely leave links down below. Thank you so much for coming by and watching today. Have an awesome day and happy crafting. Bye.